Imagine walking through London. Beneath your feet, hidden rivers are flowing. Around you, centuries-old laws are still quietly in effect. And just outside the city, landscapes exist that haven't changed in thousands of years. The United Kingdom is not just history, it's layers of reality most people never notice. Let's take a closer look. Big Ben is the bell, not the tower. Many people around the world casually call the whole clock tower in Westminster Big Ben, but that is not technically correct. Big Ben is actually the nickname of the great bell inside the tower, while the tower itself is officially called Elizabeth Tower. This is one of those classic British misunderstandings that became so popular that even locals often use the wrong name without thinking twice. The bell first rang in the 19th century, and over time, its name became attached to the entire structure in public conversation. That confusion is understandable, because the bell, the clock, and the tower are all part of one of London's most famous landmarks. Still, if you want to sound properly informed, Big Ben is the bell, not the tower. It is a small detail, but exactly the kind of detail that makes a travel fact more satisfying. In Britain, even the landmarks come with footnotes. The Thames has over 200 bridges. The River Thames is far more than just a scenic backdrop for London. It is a vital artery that has shaped the city's growth for centuries. Along its full course, the Thames is crossed by over 200 bridges, ranging from historic stone structures to modern engineering marvels. In central London alone, you will find some of the most iconic crossings, each with its own story and architectural style. These bridges are not just practical infrastructure, they are part of the city's identity and daily rhythm, carrying millions of people every day. Some, like Tower Bridge, are designed to open for passing ships, while others quietly connect neighborhoods with no fanfare at all. What makes this especially interesting is how the river once divided communities, yet today these bridges symbolize connection and movement. In a city defined by history, even crossing the street can feel like walking through time. Scotland has hundreds of islands. Scotland is not just about rugged mountains and misty landscapes, it is also a country of islands, and far more than most people realize. In total, Scotland has over 700 islands, scattered mainly along its western and northern coasts. However, only around 100 of these islands are inhabited, which creates a striking contrast between lively communities and vast, untouched nature. Places like the Orkney and Shetland Islands have their own distinct culture, accents, and traditions shaped by centuries of isolation and even Viking influence. Many of the uninhabited islands remain wild, windswept, and largely unexplored, offering a glimpse into a more ancient version of Britain. What makes this especially fascinating is how different life can feel from one island to another, despite being part of the same country. Scotland's islands are not just geographic features, they are entire worlds of their own, each with a unique identity. Wales has the most castles per area. Wales is often called the castle capital of the world, and for good reason. It has more castles per square mile than any other country, with over 600 recorded castle sites scattered across its landscape. These structures were not built for decoration. They were tools of control, defense, and power, especially during the medieval conflicts between the Welsh and the English. Many of the most impressive castles, such as those built under King Edward I, still stand today in remarkable condition. Walking through Wales, it is almost impossible not to encounter the ruins or towers of a fortress, often perched dramatically on hills or overlooking the sea. What makes this especially compelling is how these castles are deeply tied to Welsh identity and history. They are not just tourist attractions, but reminders of centuries of struggle, resilience, and cultural survival in a small but fiercely proud nation. The UK has a surprisingly high tornado rate. When people think of tornadoes, they usually picture the United States, not the United Kingdom. However, measured by land area, the UK actually experiences one of the highest rates of tornadoes in the world. These are typically much smaller and weaker than the destructive storms seen in places like Texas or Oklahoma, which is why they rarely make international headlines. Most British tornadoes occur during unsettled weather, especially in late autumn and winter, and often pass quickly with limited damage. Still, they are real, officially recorded phenomena, and the UK sees dozens of them each year. What makes this particularly surprising is how it clashes with the common image of calm, rainy British weather. In reality, the atmosphere over the British Isles can be quite unstable at times. It is a quiet reminder that even the most seemingly predictable climates can hold unexpected extremes. The London Underground was the first of its kind. The London Underground is not just an iconic part of the city, it is the world's first underground railway system, opening in the 19th century. At a time when cities were struggling with overcrowded streets and horse-drawn traffic, London engineers took a bold step by moving transport below ground. The earliest sections were built using a cut-and-cover method, meaning entire roads were dug up and then rebuilt above the tracks. Steam trains originally ran through these tunnels, which made journeys smoky and uncomfortable, but it was still a revolutionary solution. Over time, the system expanded and modernized, becoming one of the largest metro networks in the world. Today, millions rely on it daily, often without thinking about its historical significance. It is not just transport. It is the blueprint for every subway system that followed, from New York to Tokyo. Oxford is older than the Aztec Empire. University of Oxford is widely recognized as the oldest university in the English-speaking world, and its origins stretch back to the late 11th century. Teaching was already taking place there long before the Aztec civilization even began to rise in Central America. This creates a striking historical contrast. While scholars were debating philosophy in Oxford's early halls, entire empires elsewhere in the world had yet to be formed. The university grew gradually, without a single founding date, which makes it even more fascinating from a historical perspective. Over the centuries, it has educated countless influential figures, from scientists and writers to world leaders. What makes Oxford unique is not just its age, but the continuity of learning that has persisted for nearly 1,000 years. It is a living institution where the past and present exist side by side in a very real, tangible way. All unclaimed swans belong to the monarch. In the United Kingdom, there is an old and rather unusual law stating that all unmarked mute swans in open water are the property of the reigning monarch. This tradition dates back to medieval times, when swans were considered a luxury food reserved for royalty and the nobility. While today swans are no longer eaten in that way, the legal concept still exists and is taken seriously in ceremonial contexts. Each year, a special event called Swan Upping takes place on the River Thames, where officials count and check the health of swans. During this process, Birds are carefully handled, recorded, and then released back into the wild. What makes this tradition fascinating is how it blends conservation with centuries-old royal custom. It may sound strange, but in Britain, even wildlife can carry a touch of monarchy. Children can legally drink alcohol at home. In the United Kingdom, the legal approach to alcohol is more nuanced than many people expect. While the official age for purchasing alcohol is 18, children as young as 5 are legally allowed to drink alcohol at home or in other private premises. This does not mean it is encouraged, but rather reflects a long-standing cultural attitude that prioritizes supervised, gradual exposure over strict prohibition. In practice, it is usually limited to small amounts and special occasions, often under parental guidance. Public drinking, however, is much more tightly regulated, and selling alcohol to minors remains illegal. What makes this particularly interesting is how it contrasts with stricter laws in countries like the United States. The British system assumes that responsible habits can be learned early in a controlled environment. It is a pragmatic approach shaped by tradition rather than moral panic. The right to roam allows public access to land. In parts of the United Kingdom, particularly in England and Wales, there is a legal concept known as the right to roam, which allows the public to walk across certain privately owned land without needing permission. This right was formalized in the early 21st century through legislation designed to preserve access to the countryside. It mainly applies to areas such as mountains, moorlands, heathlands, and downs, rather than farmland or private gardens. What makes this system remarkable is the balance it creates between private ownership and public enjoyment of nature. Walkers are expected to behave responsibly, respecting wildlife, property, and local communities. For many people, this freedom is an essential part of British outdoor culture, encouraging exploration and connection with the landscape. It reflects a deeply rooted belief that nature should not be completely closed off, even when it is privately owned. Stonehenge predates the Egyptian pyramids. Stonehenge is one of the most mysterious landmarks in the world, and many people are surprised to learn that it is older than the Egyptian pyramids. The earliest phases of Stonehenge date back to around 3,000 years before Christ, while the Great Pyramid of Giza was built later. This means that long before ancient Egypt reached its architectural peak, people in Britain were already constructing complex ceremonial sites. The massive stones, some transported from miles away, were arranged with remarkable precision, suggesting advanced knowledge of engineering and possibly astronomy. Despite centuries of research, the exact purpose of Stonehenge is still debated, with theories ranging from religious rituals to astronomical calendars. What makes it especially compelling is how such an ancient structure continues to spark curiosity today. It stands as a reminder that early societies were far more sophisticated than we often assume. London has hidden ghost stations underground. Beneath the busy streets of London lies a forgotten network of abandoned underground stations, often referred to as ghost stations. These are real platforms and tunnels that were once part of the active transport system but were later closed due to low usage, route changes, or modernization. Some of them remain almost perfectly preserved, frozen in time with old signs, tiles, and even advertising posters still visible. During the Second World War, several of these stations were repurposed as air raid shelters, protecting civilians from bombing raids. Today, they are mostly inaccessible to the public, though occasional guided tours offer a rare glimpse inside. What makes these ghost stations fascinating is the sense of hidden history beneath a modern city. While millions travel above and below ground every day, entire forgotten spaces quietly exist just out of sight, like a parallel London that never fully disappeared. Scotland and England have separate legal systems. Although they are part of the same country, England and Scotland operate under entirely different legal systems, a distinction that dates back centuries. When the two kingdoms united politically in the early 18th century, Scotland retained its own laws, courts, and legal traditions. This means that certain legal concepts, procedures, and even verdict options differ significantly between the two. For example, Scotland has a unique, not proven verdict in criminal trials, which does not exist in England. The structure of courts and the way cases are handled can also vary, reflecting different historical influences. What makes this especially interesting is that these parallel systems continue to function side by side within one sovereign state. It is a clear example of how the United Kingdom is not a single uniform entity, but rather a union of distinct nations with their own identities and traditions preserved over time. One of the world's shortest flights is in Scotland. In the far north of Scotland, there is a commercial flight route between the islands of Westray and Papa Westray that holds the record as one of the shortest scheduled flights in the world. Under ideal conditions, the journey takes less than 2 minutes from takeoff to landing, making it shorter than many airport taxi times elsewhere. The route exists not as a novelty, but as a practical connection for local residents, providing essential transport between remote communities. Despite its brief duration, it is a fully operational flight with regular schedules and passengers. What makes this particularly striking is how it challenges our usual perception of air travel as long-distance transportation. Here, flying is simply a quick hop across water, replacing what would otherwise be a much slower boat journey. It is a perfect example of how geography shapes everyday life in the United Kingdom. Handling salmon suspiciously is illegal. Among the United Kingdom's many unusual laws, one stands out for its oddly specific wording. It is illegal to handle salmon in suspicious circumstances. This rule comes from modern legislation aimed at preventing illegal fishing and the black market trade of salmon. While it sounds humorous, the intention behind the law is serious, targeting activities that could harm fish populations and disrupt regulated fisheries. The phrase "suspicious circumstances" gives authorities flexibility to act when there is reason to believe the fish may have been obtained unlawfully. What makes this particularly memorable is how the legal language itself became famous for its peculiar tone. It is one of those rare examples where a real law sounds almost like a joke, yet serves a practical purpose. In Britain, even environmental protection can come wrapped in a line that feels straight out of a comedy sketch. The Isle of Wight has no motorways. Isle of Wight is one of the United Kingdom's most well-known islands, yet it stands out for a surprising reason. It has no motorways at all. Despite its popularity as a tourist destination and its relatively large population, the island has never developed high-speed motorway infrastructure like mainland Britain. Instead, it relies on smaller A roads and local routes which naturally limit traffic speed and volume. This gives the island a noticeably slower, more relaxed pace of life compared to the often congested mainland. What makes this especially interesting is how it preserves a more traditional driving experience, where journeys feel less rushed and more scenic. For visitors, it adds to the charm, reinforcing the sense of stepping into a quieter, less modernized environment. In a country known for dense transport networks, the Isle of Wight offers a rare exception. Skara Brae is older than the pyramids. Skara Brae is one of the best preserved prehistoric villages in the world, and it predates the Egyptian pyramids by centuries. Located in the Orkney Islands, this ancient settlement dates back to around 3,000 years before Christ, offering a remarkably detailed glimpse into Neolithic life. The site was buried under sand for thousands of years, which helped protect its stone-built houses, furniture, and layout. Inside these homes, archaeologists discovered beds, storage spaces, and even primitive shelving, all carved from stone. What makes Skara Brae especially fascinating is how advanced and organized the community appears, suggesting a level of social structure that challenges common assumptions about early humans. Walking through the site today feels less like viewing ruins and more like stepping into a frozen moment in time, where everyday life from thousands of years ago is still clearly visible. London taxi drivers must master the knowledge. Becoming a licensed taxi driver in London is not a simple process. It requires passing an infamous test known as the knowledge. This exam demands that candidates memorize thousands of streets, landmarks, and routes across the city, often taking several years to complete. Unlike relying on GPS, drivers are expected to navigate efficiently using only their memory, even under pressure. During the testing process, they are questioned face-to-face and must explain the fastest routes between random locations in real time. What makes this especially impressive is the level of mental mapping involved, which has even been studied by scientists interested in brain development. Licensed drivers are known for their deep understanding of London's layout, allowing them to adapt instantly to traffic or road closures. It is a profession that combines tradition, discipline, and an extraordinary level of local expertise. Hidden rivers flow beneath British cities. Beneath several major cities in the United Kingdom, including London, there are entire rivers that now flow underground, hidden from public view. As cities expanded over the centuries, smaller natural waterways were gradually covered, redirected, or built over to make space for roads and buildings. In London, rivers such as the Fleet and the Tyburn still exist, but they now run through tunnels beneath the modern city. What makes this especially fascinating is that these are not artificial systems. They are real rivers that once shaped the landscape before urban development took over. In some cases, their paths still influence street layouts and drainage systems today. It is a reminder that even in one of the world's most developed capitals, nature has not disappeared. It has simply been concealed. Beneath the busy streets, a quieter, older geography continues to flow unnoticed. Orkney holds some of Europe's oldest sites. Orkney Islands are home to some of the most important prehistoric sites in Europe, many of which date back over 5,000 years. This remote group of islands in northern Scotland contains remarkably well-preserved monuments, including stone circles, burial chambers, and ancient villages. What makes Orkney particularly unique is how these sites are not isolated discoveries, but part of an entire cultural landscape that reveals how early communities lived, worked, and organized themselves. The level of preservation is exceptional, allowing archaeologists to study details that have been lost elsewhere. Despite their age, these structures still stand strong against harsh coastal weather. For visitors, it feels less like visiting ruins and more like stepping into a fully formed ancient world. Orkney quietly challenges the idea that early civilizations were centered only in places like Egypt or Mesopotamia. British plugs are among the safest in the world. The United Kingdom uses a distinctive electrical plug design that is widely considered one of the safest in the world. Unlike many other systems, British plugs contain built-in fuses that protect devices from electrical surges, reducing the risk of damage or fire. The sockets themselves are also designed with safety shutters that only open when the correct plug is inserted, preventing accidental contact with live parts. This is especially important in households with children, where safety standards are taken very seriously. The design may appear bulky compared to others, but every element serves a clear purpose. What makes this system particularly impressive is how it combines engineering efficiency with practical safety features. It is not the most elegant design, but it is highly effective. In typical British fashion, function comes first, even in something as ordinary as a plug. If this video changed how you see the United Kingdom, then you're going to love what's coming next. Make sure you subscribe, because I'm breaking down countries in a way you won't see anywhere else. No cliches, no boring facts, just the real story. And before you go, tell me in the comments, which fact shocked you the most?